In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways.
Moya Ulight, Moya Ubright, welcome to Moya Political Series. As you know, I promised you guys that I'll bring you interesting people so that they can help us unpack what's happening in the country. You know, we are like the public, we don't know much. Even now there's drama happening. We follow the media in terms of our opinions. So I thought let's bring in people who are thinkers, people who are talkers, people who are opinionated. Today, I've got the former mayor, Thapelo Ahmad. I've got Phapano Phasha, who's a political strategist and a commentator and a writer. And I've got Mahasha Rampedi, who is a journalist, also a political commentator. I'm looking so forward to the conversation. I'll start with you, former mayor. Thank you so much for making time for us. So, you know, we invite you guys here so that we can get a bird's eye view from especially people who are on the inside. So, I mean, can you just give us, especially with your 1 week stint, can you just give us an eye to how do things actually work?
Thank you so much, Ntsiki. Disclaimer, former mayor of Johannesburg. I think it's also important to mention that. So, how it works. I was a mayor who was leading a coalition. Unfortunately, a coalition is not very conventional in our space or in our country. But we can see there's a political shift in terms of a political landscape in South Africa. And potentially we might have another coalition government in 2024, right? So I know a lot of people say coalitions are not working. I think it's a myth, and I think it's a narrative that has been perpetuated to antagonize our voters. Coalitions are working. Coalitions are tested elsewhere in the world, in Germany, precisely one of the countries that I might cite. And in Johannesburg also, coalition is working. It's unfortunate that there's always an element of opportunity, opportunism, because remember, politics are contestation of power in space, and every party that is in that space and every party that goes to the polls, they want control, right? And for various reasons, there could be parties that want control to transform the status quo of the voters, Abantu who are voting for us, right? But there are parties that use it for various reasons, which are different. So I'm saying coalitions are working in a sense of as a mayor or as a premier or as a president, it is inherent to one way or the other, your term of office will come to an end. But if you put mechanisms, if you put an ecosystem that wouldn't disrupt the services that are required by the voters out there. We've seen in Joburg, 2 mayors died in office, right? And that didn't even hamper a service delivery, So it can't be correct for us to say coalition hampers service delivery, therefore coalitions are not working. So it's a borrowed space. Everyone that goes in that space, one way or the other, at the end of a term of office, one way or the other, they will leave the office, and service delivery shouldn't be hampered.
Mahasha, your thoughts on what Thapelo is saying with the coalition, the status quo? Do coalitions really, do they work? Are they working for the people?
Look, coalitions in principle do work, as Ahmad has said. I mean, if they can work in Israel, work in Germany, as he said, and work in many other democracies, why wouldn't they work here? The only difference is that where they may be seen to be not working well is where there's no commitment towards service delivery or commitment towards doing good for the people. If you've got coalitions that are based on positions, political power, and there's no sense of togetherness and providing services, then you'll have problems. But where you've got different political parties uniting behind a common program, which is to provide services and then do good for the community, there shouldn't be any problem with coalitions, because at the end of the day, if you listen to almost all the political parties here in South Africa and abroad, their manifesto they can differ here and there, but in principle, what is common about them is that we are for the people. We want to provide services. We want to improve the economy of this country. We want political stability. We want this and that. On that front, there's hardly anything that differentiates them. It can be the approach. How do you want to achieve that? What method would you like to apply to achieve that? But at the end of the day, they all promise their compatriots good governance, economic boom, the quality of life. So if they're all promising that, why should it be a problem if they're doing it as a coalition as opposed to a single political party? Where I agree with Ahmad is that in most cases, and I can't rule out that possibility even here in South Africa, you'll have people who stand to benefit from coalition governments, and then they will always say that coalition governments are, sacrosanct, and then you'll have the majority parties that are threatened by coalition governments, and they'll always try to badmouth coalition governments and associate them with instability, infighting, poor services. So it becomes a case of who stands to benefit from what, But in principle, I don't think there's anything wrong or inherently inappropriate with coalition governments.
Phapano, it's so nice to have a female in studio finally. I mean, we never have women who are vocal and, so thank you so much for honoring the invitation. So even your thoughts on how the coalition has played out. I know you used to work for the ANC, so I'm sure your thoughts will be quite interesting on this topic of coalitions.
No, thank you, Tsiki, and thank you for the invite. Well, from where I sit, I've had a first-hand experience of how coalitions work, and I listened to the chairperson of Al Jama, and I would say that in their case, for example, it works because they have some limited power. They've got a mayor in the coalition government or in the coalition agreement, so it would work in their interest. But I'm sure if you were to have other political parties which are in municipalities, they will have a different opinion. And I'm sure if you look at the countries that Pete has mentioned, they would have had their own experiences. Now, when it comes to my experience, I believe that coalitions have worked in the interest of political parties and not necessarily the people. And if you take some of the cities, or if you take some of the municipalities, if you take the city of Johannesburg, if you were to take Ekurhuleni, if you were to take Tshwane, and so on, and you look at the disparities, if you look at the services, you look at the townships, and you take the political parties that were voted for by the people who live in squalor and degradation, you would agree that their lives have not changed.
Yeah?
Their lives have not changed. They don't have water. They don't have any sanitation. The majority of those people are unemployed. So these coalitions are not working for the people. They're working for these political parties. So that's why I think I differ. And what we have seen as well is that if you look at the office of the mayor, it's also compounded, for example, by members of the African National Congress. And I would understand that it might be because of the agreement that is there. if you look at the boards themselves, the people who sit there are the political heads in the respective municipalities. Now, you cannot have Al Jamaa, for example, or the Patriotic Alliance, or the EFF itself questioning the integrity of those boards, because who accounts to who? So I think perhaps, the biggest challenge is that coalitions, they are a new concept in a way in terms of how they have happened. But I think what is lacking is the participation of voters, because we have allowed political players to make decisions for us, even though sometimes they don't even perform.
Yeah.
We have not interrogated what they claim they would do or what they are doing. So, and perhaps maybe to allow some of the panelists to come in, I think, unfortunately, for many of us who are a middle class, who are professionals, we have allowed politics to, to perpetuate poverty. Yeah. Because for many of us who are in the suburbs, there's a level of services. We might have potholes here and there, but our people are not being serviced, and you know that, Thapelo. And that is why the majority of political parties, their slogans and their rhetoric will be changing the lives of our people. Our people are worse off. And that's the unfortunate part of South Africa today. And politicians who are capital controlled, who are selfish, when they start to draft these fancy cars, blue lights, they forget about our people. But that's my opinion about coalitions. They're not working. Thank you.
Please feel free to engage. Yes.
No, I hear Phapano, but I would like to disagree with her, right? To a certain extent, coalitions in South Africa only started in 2016. 2016 to 2024, how many years now? Let's argue 8 years, right? There is a party, a ruling party that has been there for the past 30 years. So he can't measure the failure of service delivery with the change of government that has happened swiftly in the period of 4 years or 5 years or 6 years. And as Al Jamaa, we're only governing the city of Johannesburg precisely a year now. And if there is anything that you could point out, let me maybe make reference on when I was in the office, right? When I was in the office, you know that there wasn't water in the city of Johannesburg. There was a huge amount of water disruption. And if there's something that I've managed to curb or successfully provide or render a solution, it was that issue of water. It was stable, right? When I took office, the city of Johannesburg didn't have senior officials. And there were a lot of acting arrangements. But it is understandable because the very same political party that had requested a ruling party for a cadre deployment document, they also do cadre deployment because they wanted to gentrify all the municipalities that they were leading or that they were governing. So they started purging senior officials. They started purging junior officials. So, of course, service delivery was disrupted because there wasn't an accounting officer. There wasn't somebody who could account for those services. This is why it was hampered. But we came in, slowly started to fill in those gaps, right? I was there for a very short period of time. And also my stay was disrupted by the ambitions of other parties. Hence why I was saying there's a contestation, right? Ambitions of other parties or ambitions of individual in other parties. And to be quite precise, those parties were also partners in our coalition. Then Mayor Kabelo Kwamanda came in. You can see there isn't disruption. There isn't. Gradually, he's growing, and gradually he even did well in terms of the audit better than Cape Town itself. So I would like to disagree with her. If you know, it's like Bafana Bafana, for argument's sake. If you change a coach now and then if the system will be inherently disrupted. But if you allow a coach to spend more time and understand the ecosystem, or the players themselves would understand the coach, the pattern that the coach is providing for them, it becomes much better, because you create a space which is agile enough for the two parties to get to understand each other. So in the city of Johannesburg, we are doing well at this stage. I can assure you. She might differ, but she knows that we are doing very well in the city of Johannesburg.
Mahasha?
Okay, look.
There are claims being made here.
There are. I'm not quite sure about the coalition government doing well in Johannesburg, but I'm not following the developments there, so I can't seriously dispute what he's saying with facts. But from time to time, just read stories about the city battling here and there. It could be, exaggerations. I can't vouch for those reports. But what is important to mention here is that, let me go back to my point about coalition government. The most important thing about coalition governments for me is that they allow political parties to counterbalance each other. In most democracies the world over, if you have a single party being in charge of all aspects of life, like any other person, a person who doesn't have to account to anybody in terms of wielding political power can make mistakes, wittingly or unwittingly. They can make mistakes. But with coalition governments, you have a situation where key players politically are able to account to each other. What is usually a concern for me about them is that sometimes, especially here in South Africa, we have seen in some councils a lot of instability, especially in the council in which he's a member, where you have political parties willy-nilly, trying to vote each other out. And before you know it, the programs, service delivery programs, get affected, because we have seen it when the new mayor comes. In most cases, you see changes in the executives or senior management. You see some projects being disrupted or shelved. You see, suddenly there will be forensic investigations into this and that, which will then delay service delivery. Where I also agree to some extent with Phapano is that sometimes coalition governments can benefit political parties more than ordinary people. But we shouldn't forget that the root cause of the problem here is not necessarily coalition governments, it's our electoral system. Our electoral system as a whole, because we elect political parties, which then nominate candidates to go to parliament, who then account to political parties and not to the ordinary voters, is the root cause of the current problem where politicians account to their political parties and not to the voters. I mean, we have seen it in parliament.
Yes.
Where there will be a motion of confidence against so-and-so, and then the mood in the country is that it must go one way or the other. And then you see parliamentarians acting one way or the other.
Party line.
And across the board, here you can't even blame the ANC only. We've seen all the political parties imposing the party line. And the reason why they are able to do that is because those people were not directly elected. So they know that they can be chucked out of parliament. And as a result, you end up having these people being loyal to their political parties because these are the same parties that deploy them, as opposed to the old people who voted for those political parties. But the problem is not as much the coalition government. It's our electoral system, because we are not directly electing public representatives. We vote for political parties, which then decide who to send to parliament. And by virtue of that system, those people would obviously be loyal to the party bosses and not to the voters.
Sesi Phapano.
Well, you know, I've looked at different systems across the world. I mean, if you take Israeli, no one questions that Netanyahu has been in power for years, for decades. In fact, if he was an African, he would be called a dictator. The US, you have a two-party system, you know, literally, and it has worked for them. And in our case, now when we speak of coalitions and we say that they work, for me, I think it brings in another interesting dimension, because in our country, we have a history of oppression and exploitation. And one of the key tenets that we all agree on is that the country needs to transform. However, you have political parties that are anti-transformation, like the Democratic Alliance, like the Freedom Front. Now, when we then start saying coalitions work, do we then factor in the ideology of the political parties? And remember that all these political parties, all of them had a manifesto. And people voted for the manifesto of each of those political parties. Now, these political parties, and obviously you speak of, because you are correct, because also it depends on the numbers that each of these political parties will get. But voters will vote for the ANC, for example, because the ANC has promised them a better life. Mm-hmm. And whites in their majority, using their racist ticket, will vote for the DA so that they maintain the status quo. And then you would have, for example, the ANC and the DA voting in parliament. And this is where it comes back to be to the will of the people. So I think these are contradictions, and unfortunately, we must also accept that politics, it's a creation of the elite. It's not ours. It's not for the people. Yeah. We are just voting cows. Hence, if you look at the ruling party, the majority of people, in fact, they call themselves the governing party. If you look at the ANC, the majority of people who vote for the ANC are the poorest of the poor. Yet the people who benefit from the ANC are the elite. So politics does not serve, you know, ordinary people.
Abantu.
Yes, I mean, you take an ordinary person. Today he's just Thapelo, he stays in the township, he doesn't have a car, goes into government. Now they're driving this big car. They've even forgotten their constituency. So again, it comes back to us as a people. We have given so much weight and power to these people, and they wield it over us. And they wield it how they want. And we do not have a say. So that's just an unfortunate aspect of this democracy, by the way, that we did not choose. There was never a referendum in this country. The democracy, I mean, you speak of the electoral system, which is in our constitution, the constitution itself. So unfortunately, these are loopholes, and we're not having that or those discussions as a people to say, what is the way forward? Because as Black people, we're not even going anywhere. We are more poor, you know, we are in debt, we are double taxed. So, but I think let the discussion flow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Phasha. So, where I am, right, it depends on what lenses are you wearing, right? And from what viewpoint are you viewing politics and the system, electoral system, right? So I want us to distinguish two things. One, where Al-Jamaa is governing, and we have a ward. That ward is in Ward 9, Lenasia, right? Our councillor there is doing very well in Ward 9, Lenasia. He's doing very well. He doesn't sleep, and he's there for the people. So hence why I'm saying it will depend on what lenses are you reading the scrolls. And over and above that, also adding on to what my colleague has made reference to, in a sense that he says the electoral system is flawed, right? So we also need to educate the voters to say politics are working for us. Because once we're saying the electoral system doesn't work for us, you would find a lot of people getting disgruntled and a lot of people not going to the polls to vote, right? And that potentially might bring back the rule of apartheid, the same way the DA went into the city of Johannesburg through the back door, because people are despondent and people are protesting to vote. And by so doing, when you protest, then somebody will bring the person who'd oppress you into power, and then it will be another circle. So one thing that I wanted us to distinguish is, yes, people, they do vote the leaders, or people do vote the individuals. We need to separate. This is why local government and the city, it is an independent statutory body from national and the provinces. So this is why the local government election is independent, and national and province, they come simultaneously. Because on local government, this is where you debate service delivery, what impacts, what changes the life of an ordinary person out there. National and province is more abstract, it's more policy orientated. So when people vote in the local government, they vote, of course, the party, and they also vote for the individual that they want them to lead. This is why. So you find two types of councillors. You find a ward councillor who's directly elected by the electorate. And then you find a PR councillor whose vote is proportional representation. The people will vote the party, and then proportionally the IEC will allocate the seat. But in terms of a ward councillor is directly elected by the people. So when you remove a proportional representative, which is a PR councillor, you don't go for a by-election. You can remove that councillor now, and immediately you can bring another councillor in. But if you remove a ward councillor, then it is detrimental to the voters, because those voters of that ward must go to the polls again and elect the person who's going to represent them, which is a ward councillor. So I wanted us to demystify that so that we don't cause confusion to the viewers at home and the voters. So the voters, there is an opportunity where they would not only vote for their party, but they would also vote for their representative, which is the ward councillor.
Sure. This is actually very helpful, what you just told us. So then what does that mean in terms of national government? In terms of then the national, when you say it's more abstract, how does that affect us then, Mahash?
No, look, it's true what he's saying, but remember, when you talk coalition governments in South Africa, they are not limited to local government. We can, or we may even have a coalition government after May. That's why I was talking in general, because they are not limited to local government. But it is true that at local government, in fact, here in South Africa, we've got two different electoral systems. One for national and provincial, which is a proportional representation, and then or the party list system, and the one for local government, which is called a mixed system, direct elections plus proportional representation, as he was saying. But that currently applies to the local government elections only. So nationally, you'll know that there's a new law that makes provisions for people to be directly elected to parliament. We don't know how it's going to pan out, but it has been passed already.
Doesn't that give us more power then? If we choose our people?
Look. Theoretically, it will, but remember now, those people who want to stand as independent candidates, the playing field is not necessarily leveled compared to the political parties, because they must get, huge amount of signatures to accompany their registrations. They must also pay some huge deposits as an individual. And so the playing field is not necessarily leveled against them. And the other thing is that the last time I checked, the allocation of PR seats or proportional representation seats doesn't favor them the same way it favors political parties. Maybe they'll correct it moving forward. But
Where is this democracy,
as we stand now, it doesn't necessarily help the voters that much, because independent candidates have got a mountain to climb whenever they compete against political parties, as we speak currently.
Yeah.
And the rationale behind that, from what the authorities or the IEC and other people are saying, is that they want to make sure that they don't have a lot of chance takers who want to appear on the ballot and they stand no chance of winning, and then you end up with a ballot paper that moves from here all the way to the entrance.
But then it's still economic exclusion. That's the problem. Siswam, I see you're sitting there with many thoughts.
I think it's all a crime scene, to be honest. Think about it. All these political parties are in the townships, they're in the rural areas, they're in the informal settlements, they're not in the suburbs. So everyone is vying for the vote of the poor. Yet, when all of them, they get into power, they disappear. And I think, for me, what is also interesting about this democracy of ours, this illusion of this democracy, is the very fact that the key funders of these political parties, which is one topic that we don't speak about, so that we're able to unpack it properly. It's the oligarch. It's the South African white oligarch in particular. Most of these parties are running after money, after Jewish money. Everyone is asking, where's Mzansi getting money from? Where's Rise Mzansi getting money from? Where is that one of Colin Makubela?
Sarah.
Yeah, where's Sarah getting money from? So that's another conundrum with our very democracy, that the elite, in fact, are the ones who are in charge. That's why if you look even at the policies that Thapelo is speaking about at a national level, they tend to favor those who put in the money. So we vote whites, or the white oligarchs, not all whites, in fact, the white oligarchs, they put in the money and they choose who wins. That's why these elections are going to be very interesting, because we might not even have, if the ANC wins, not that if the ANC wins, let's say if the ANC gets below 50, I foresee a situation where they dip in a name like Songezo. They say that we want this president. Or they dip in any other name, but they say that this is what we want, because they're putting the money. So,
like they did with CR.
Like they did with CR. So they are putting the money, they are going to be the decision makers. And all of them you can see. I just saw an announcement now by Ndate Mafi Morobe. I'm not sure what they're going to be doing, but they're going to be announcing change for something, but they want to save us. There's people who are quiet about gender-based violence, about poverty, about Black lives, but they all want to save us. So, there are serious fundamental flaws with this democracy of ours. And I think one day in Tsiki, maybe we must take this to community so that we are also able to educate our people. Our people don't know. In the townships now, you'll see there are going to be, what are these things? Food parcels. They're going to be buying our people food parcels, because even in the township, our people are tired. The last local elections, they didn't come out in numbers. That's why the ANC won, but they didn't get sufficient numbers like the Democratic Alliance. White people defend their ill-begotten wealth, so they come out in their numbers. But our people are just tired. They know that they've been used. They might not be aware to that particular level, but they're tired. That's why they're not going out. The ANC, for example, as we speak, it has become a rural party. That's why this week they'll be in KZN. They were in Mpumalanga. They cannot come to Gauteng because, the black middle class and, people in the urban area, they are fully aware of the shenanigans and deceit of the African National Congress, that they serve the elite. So that's the unfortunate aspect of our democracy. And I'm hoping that with such platforms, you'll be able to take it to our people so that we're able to educate them about this democracy, this thing called a democracy, because it's not working for them. It's not working for our youth. Young people, Thapelo, you are saying that coalitions are working. Young people are unemployed. They're unemployable. They're in drugs. There's lawlessness in the country. You saw what happened by Crown, so it's a mess. And someone needs to stand up and say, hold on a minute. Something has gone wrong. What do we do? Instead of, uniting behind wrong things. So, because, anyway, let me just hand over.
No, I don't want to. I would like to agree with Phapano to a degree, but I also want to reiterate that coalitions are working, right? Maybe to a certain extent, our democracy is the one that isn't working. I think you've made mention earlier that the democracy is not working, and you cited the USA, where it has only two-party system, right? Because the least party you have on the ballot paper, the better, right? So the democracy that we have was given to us by our oppressor. So in so doing, we shouldn't anticipate our oppressor to liberate us. It's highly impossible, right? But how do we make this democracy to work for us? So let me just create a scenario. There's three people. One person is a scientist, the second one is the doctor, the third person is the lover, right? So when these people are looking at a female body or a body when they're looking at the body, let me not put gender on the body, right? They're looking at the body. The first person who's a scientist, they see experiment. The second person who's a doctor, they see a patient. And the third person who's a lover, they want to consummate, to derive benefits in whichever way. So I'm categorically citing this example by saying that when we look at our democracy and we say our democracy doesn't work, it's also important what lenses are we wearing, right? If Phapano is wearing the stiletto, stiletto, I do not know the pain that she's enduring when she walks in her stiletto, because I've never used a stiletto, and I can't just critique, you understand? There are parties that have identified opportunistic elements, and of course they would go to the rurals, because they know at the rural, the person who's there, they are not critical enough. This person is only happy when they get the 350 grand every month, and they are indebted to this particular organization, right? So we need to change the paradigm. We are emerging political parties. My colleague says the playing field are leveled, or maybe they are not leveled to a degree, right? But when we are in the system, we are saying they are leveled for us, because none of us has ever thought Thapelo Ahmad would have been a mayor, or Al Jamaa would have a mayor in a lady seat, say 3, but also looking closely to the donors. We understand. So the part of these disruptions, the coalitions, it's also influenced by the donors, because Project Thapelo Ahmad, who's a member of Al Jama, why him? You understand? So the system is disrupted. Why that one? The system is disrupted. So this is why there is on record also, I think News 24, where Helen Zille says, Gayton Mackenzie betrayed us when I resigned, because there was a concession. There were deals. There were people who influenced the decision, right? But it's not a space to discuss that. It's there. You can Google. Helen Zille says,
Hey, the space. Trust me, this is Moya. Feel
it's
free.
there. So anyone who wants to to get a scientific evidence, they can go to Google. It's there. I'm not casting aspersion, but I'm saying, to a certain degree, my colleagues, both of them, Barry, who pays the pauper, calls the shot.
Yeah.
You understand? Yeah. So you can't bite the hand that is feeding you. So let me leave it there.
Okay, I think we should also consider the fact that, in my view, there's a problem in South Africa with our politics, political leadership, political accountability across the board, and even at national level, which I think may lead to an impression that coalition governments are a problem. But in my view, I think the problem is our politics in general. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. If you look at what is happening in the provinces and national level, in most cases, almost all of them, there are no coalition governments. But let's look at how South Africa and most of the provinces have been governed to date. Massive unemployment. The latest unemployment stats show that we have reached about 36%, I think. And then you look at the electricity crisis, unprecedented power blackouts, no coalition governments at national level. You look at how the state-owned enterprises are being mismanaged. They're being sold, to the highest bidder and to mostly politically connected individuals. You look at SAA sold for 51 rand to another consortium
Abilung.
by the government, no coalition government. And you look at poverty levels in the country currently. We're still the most unequal country in the world. High rate of unemployment as we speak. The recent Stats SA figures released the last time I checked, they were saying that black women were the were the mostly affected by unemployment in South Africa. And when you look at that, there is no coalition government. You look at crime levels. Our crime has reached, unprecedented levels. In fact, as we speak now, we are reaching a point where you may have to count innocent people among criminals. You may have to say, no, this one is not a criminal. You won't say, and this one is a criminal.
Yeah, exactly.
You reach a point you may say, this one is not a criminal. Even that one is not a criminal. That's how rife, crime is. I mean, you look at our law enforcement agencies. Our borders are porous. We get people, being killed and maimed in broad daylight, and that case won't go anywhere. You've got cash in transit heists almost every second or third day. So you can see that at national level, even at provincial level, our politics is just a problem. go to the National Assembly. You've got political parties or our political leaders in parliament uniting behind causes that are of less significant value to the voters. They can't unite to expropriate land, for example. They can't unite to pass a bill or law that will impose structural economic changes. You know, they'll unite behind a campaign to remove Judge John Hlophe. They'll unite to remove Advocate Usisiwe Mkhwebane. They can even work day and night, you know, fast track processes, make sure that those committees sit as scheduled, you know. But where the majority of people expect them to unite, issues of land, issues of the economy, issues, racism, you know, they hardly unite, you know. But the point I'm trying to hammer home is that at national level and provincial level, there are no coalition governments. If the only problem was a coalition government, you wouldn't expect these problems to take place where you've got one political party. There's no contestation for power. It's just a single political party that can call the shots and decide whatever to do. But there are still problems. You also go to some municipalities. I'll give an example with a municipality in Limpopo called Mogalakwena. The former seat is in Mokopane, the former Potgietersrus.
Okay.
Or Pipiras, as they say. That municipality or that town is the second biggest town in Limpopo after the city of Polokwane, surrounded by mines like Anglo and many others. But there's hardly anything that's working in that municipality. If you go to that municipality today and just drive past on your way to Polokwane, the roads are bad, they're filled with potholes. If you had visited that town, say 15 years ago, you'll think you're in a different town today. You know, it is dilapidated. But there's no coalition government there. It's an ANC-run municipality. It has always been run by the ANC since 1994. But nothing seems to be happening. They chop and change mayors like nobody's business. There was a time when political killings were rife in that municipality. You know, at some point, one mayor was walking around surrounded by about 10 bodyguards, you know, because they were just killing each other. But there are no services, you know, and there's no coalition government there, you know. So for me, what I'm trying to say is that it depends on the will of the political parties. You know, coalition governments are not a problem per se. It depends on the political will. It depends on the commitment towards the voters. It depends on the will to provide services, and it depends on, you know, the commitment of a political party to do right. You know, you can still fail without a coalition government, and you can still succeed with a coalition government, depending on the political will beyond that government. You know.
Phapano, are we saying that black people can't govern? What are we saying?
Well, have black people actually been given the liberty to govern? I think that's what we should. That's how I would, you know, respond to your question with another question. But I think coming to what Pete has just alluded to, do you still call yourself Pete?
Mahasha now.
Oh, okay. No, thank you. No, thank you. What he is literally saying is that we are in a failed state. And unfortunately, we have not acceded to the point that we are a failed state. Because if you look at the global framework for what makes a failed state, South Africa would tick all the boxes. Lawlessness, high unemployment rate, negative pathologies, you know, so on and so on. But now the question is, if those who are supposed to lead us are failing, why do they want us to vote for them again? If you are failing your constituency, why would you want us to give you our vote again to do what? Because the assumption would be that we vote for you so that there's a return on investment.
Yeah.
And we vote for you because you have performed. But clearly you have failed your voters. And in this case, you made, an example, because if you look at Mogalakwena, as much as it's dysfunctional, those mining houses are making money, profits, and those profits are leaving our country. The people who are there, remember, one of the things that government says is that what's on top is yours, what's on top is yours, and what's underneath is ours. So the minerals belong to the government. And if you look at these mining houses, who sits in those boards? It's the very ANC leaders. It's former ANC leaders. It's people who claim that they liberated us. They sit in those mining houses. And when you look at the areas and the people around those mining houses and what happens there, alcoholism, HIV, AIDS, promiscuity. So I think it's a serious indictment. But one thing that I will say is that what the governing party has managed to achieve and succeed is giving us civil liberties. And so me and you, we have the right to sit with this man and have this engagement. Women before us did not have this opportunity that we have. We have an opportunity to be lovers, Our boy children can be gay. We can stay in the suburbs. Our kids can go to white schools, but we do not have economic freedoms. Then what does it mean? What does it all amount to? It means that, again, it's just a huge fallacy. And if you look at a province like Limpopo and those municipalities, that is where the ANC is going to get the majority of the votes. In Limpopo, in the Northern Cape, KZN is another story. But that is where the ANC is going to get the majority of the votes, from the people that they are not servicing, the people that they are not serving. And it's a serious indictment. And I just wish for all of us who are in urban areas, who at least have this opportunity to know better, that we must ensure that we go back to our people and teach them differently, and perhaps start being our brothers and sisters keeper, that our people stop relying on or being so reliant on this 350 and the social grants. Because if we start investing in our communities, our people will start seeing things differently. Because when you move up the ladder, even your knowledge and your thinking changes. You start seeing differently. You start seeing that, no, but these people are lying to me. This ANC has been in charge, but the middle class, if you look at the middle class, this administration in particular, the sixth administration, has destroyed the middle class. I was looking at statistics. We're probably sitting at 7% in terms of real, what is prescribed as, the real middle, the black middle class in particular. It has been eroded. We don't have a middle class. The majority of our people, they have been pushed back into poverty. And we are sitting and people are saying, vote us back into power. To do what? To destroy us, to kill us even further, to destroy boy children. Because this democracy, black men are doing far worse. Yes, we're talking about statistics of unemployed and women, but no one talks about the boy child. No one talks about, black men. And I've had this discussion with Thapelo. In the township, if you go to the townships, black men are in the streets. They're unemployed, they're depressed, they're killing themselves. If you look at the murder rates, it's black men who die more than any other race. In fact, more than women as well. And no one speaks about that. So one of the things that we must pick up about this democracy is how it has emasculated our black men. It has emasculated our black men. It has given us as women material rights.
Yeah.
But we don't have black men.
Yeah.
So
You.
it's one of the indictments. Of,
Heavy.
But at least I'm still there on the stats. So I would like to agree with both my colleagues and also building from Mr. Mahasha. So when he's citing Mogalakwena, All right. So the problem there, it's not the parties themselves, it's the system that wasn't agile enough for access. And that access, it's supposed to be the access that transforms the masses. You must use the levers of power to transform me and you, people who are voting for you, right? Because Ntate Mahasha, in Mogalakwena, I know there was an incident that back in the days when I was still an activist, wasn't even very formal with politics. One of the mines I won't mention, right? They were mining 500 meters away, rather not mining, but blasting 500 meters away from the school. Blasting. So they would tell the school that we are going to blast, and the school will be halted because the mine wants to blast, right? And when you report the matter to the higher authorities or the ministers, because they also benefit in a way, they do not take the matter seriously. So this system has opened up an element of corruption, right? Because remember, for a longest of time, we were underprivileged or we were excluded from participation on the table. So when you get there, most of us, it becomes me first, other than thinking of transforming everyone. Muammar Gaddafi, in as much as it was said he was a dictator, he said, so at the time when he was leading Libya, every motorist was subsidized with petrol. And even social housing, he says, I wouldn't build my parents a house until every Libyan gets a social house. So you need to dignify the inhabitants. You need to dignify the electorate. You need to dignify. When we're saying people must be patriotic, it has to be across board. It shouldn't be patriotism for the few. It's patriotism for all of us.
The king is supposed to eat last, actually.
The king must eat last. So when you visit me in my house, when you visit me in my house, and I dish the meal, you must eat first.
Yeah.
And then when my guests are finished, then I can sit down and eat. That's how it should be. I shouldn't be the one who's eating and then I forget my guests.
Exactly.
But I'm not sure if, in a subtle tone, Phasha is saying, so we are being emasculated as men. And then I'm also going to paraphrase, and I speak under correction. She says, they've made a boy child a gay. That's what she said. I don't know what does that mean. I was interested to hear that part.
You're going to get me into trouble.
We need to interrogate, right? It's a political debate. We need to interrogate whether we want to take a position for or against. So if we do not talk about these things, what are we saying about our leadership role? Or what are we saying about our leadership style? So we need to critique. And we need to be robust. We need to be pragmatic. I'm not subjective when I talk about gay or the likes, and I don't want to be misquoted. But let us allow her the space, because she might be grilled tomorrow. You understand? Let us allow her the space to clarify.
Okay, we will. But I need to warn you guys that you got like 1 minute each. Unfortunately, the time is up. I know good conversations, they go so fast. Mahasha, do you have quick wrap up? There's literally 3 minutes left.
Okay. I'd like to go back to the point about whether or not black people can lead, or whether they are just inherently, bad leaders.
They must be led.
I don't think so. Black people can lead, but it depends on how they came into power. Malcolm X explained this thing, profoundly in one of his speeches, I think in the 1960s. He was asked a similar question about the performance of black leaders. And he mentioned something along the lines of, I paraphrase, I'm not aware of a black leader who failed his people without having been propped up, supported, or funded by white people. In this case, I'll replace white people with white oligarchs. The majority of black people who fail as leaders, if you look at their background, how they rose through the ranks, they were actually made or propped up or supported or funded by white companies, white corporates, or white oligarchs. So when they get into their positions, theirs is not to serve black people. In fact, they are almost expected to fail so that the majority of black people can be disillusioned and think that, it serves no point to actually be in politics or even vote because these black people are even failing us. They've been sent there to go and fail. Proper black people who have not been propped up by white oligarchs, they never fail in most cases their constituencies. The problem is that they will never reach the top because they'll never be funded. I mean, there's a reason why even today the PAC and AZAPO have never been funded by white oligarchs. It's because, in my view, they know that they will never get in there and deliberately fail their people. So they want people who will go there and then indicate left and turn right. Their skin color is wanted, but when they get there, they must actually serve the interest of white people.
Sisi?
Well, in closing, I just want to say that white people invest for the future. The democracy that we have was decided decades ago, long before 1994. And as we speak, we have research institutes like Brenhurst Foundation that have already projected for the next 15 years, 20 years. And where else, as we, abantu abamnyama, we do not have any plans. Those who have money, they fund soccer teams, they fund churches, they don't fund research and development, they don't fund civil society. So we have a big problem. That's why whites will continue funding black people so that black people will continue with the white agenda. So we are in white South Africa. I don't see any changes anytime soon because we do not have the structures. We are not well organized. We are not well funded. We are not disciplined. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time. I wish we had booked 2 hours. This was such an amazing conversation. Guys at home, as you've heard, it's kind of like the Durban July. The political parties are the horses. The white people just bet on them. See you guys next time.
Who are you when all you were has been diluted by lies and white lines cancelling out all that which has been written of your history? Why do you look at yourself as a mystery? Doesn't the sun shine because you open your eyes? Doesn't the moon stay situated within the same stars your DNA sparkles off? Your spirit knows that surely corner into e off. Buza umoya so you may return to being well off. Because spiritually you are rich, yet your ancestors cry because you are out of reach. But yours is to command all elements while God takes inspiration from the very mirror she looked at to become. Remember who you are and never finish just when they think that with you they are done.